right. It said I'm recording at least, so it looks like it's
perfect.
Yeah, let's
That's
hope
amazing.
it looks great too. I'm not sure with my setup, but we'll do the best of it.
Yes. All right. So now we have briefly just introduced you to today's session. So this is an online open house together with some international and Nordic applicants for you to get more information about what Hyper Island is, as well as getting, those insights that only our students can share with you. So we are going to take you through the agenda now. So if we can look at the next slide, here you see what this session is going to look like. We're of course going to start off with a little quick check-in, as we always do at Hyper Island, just to kind of see how we're feeling, how we're doing, to set some standards. We'll be covering, of course, what is Hyper Island, our 12 full-time programs. We'll briefly go into the admission cycle of the Nordic versus the international, and then the most interesting part of today, which is the part one of before Hyper Island, what was going through the minds of our now students, and then as well as being at Hyper Island, how is it to be a student here in Sweden? And then, of course, in the end, there will be some time for questions if you have any. For now, it would be good if you do mute yourself and just tune in. But of course, if you have questions, post them in the chat, and we will be making sure to cover them as we go. And then, of course, we will check out. But for now, let's go into the next slide and to do a little check-in. So basically, what I was mentioning earlier, the check-in question is to set the standards or set the alignment, see how are we doing. So we thought that we could check in today with one word or sentence. What are you hoping to get out of this session? And you can just post it in the chat so we know what's on your mind right now. If I were to go, I would probably say that I'm hoping to get some more like insights, more details about how life is in Karlskrona. I'm very curious to hear what, for instance, Blaise and Larissa has to say about that, but also hear more from John and Patrick as well. And now I can see we have some the admissions process, getting more inspired, more knowledge, learn more from the current students, and some clarity. Amazing. That sounds good. I think we are checked in, and because we're mindful of time, we will now go forward to the next slide. So Hyper Island. Hyper Island, commonly described as being a creative business school. Our school was founded in 1996 in Karlskrona by Jonathan Briggs, Lars Lund, and David Eriksson. Often heard as the famous island in Sweden, we're actually an yrkeshögskola, also known as higher vocational education, which is a post-secondary form of education that combines both theoretical and practical studies in close cooperation with employers and industry. And because of this, we're highly regulated by the MYH, which stands for Myndigheten för yrkeshögskolan, which is an authority for higher education. And this means that to be able to offer these programs that we offer, we have to go through this long process to prove that there is a need in the industry for jobs in these fields. And of course, then we naturally have to quality assure our admissions process, and our programs are audited by this authority MYH to make sure that we basically deliver what we say we will. So rest assured that we are official, we are regulated and government supported. And I think this is good to know when you're trying to explain Hyper Island to your parents or family or friends. So if we go to the next slide, here we have the Hyper Island's full-time YH programs that we will be offering August 2023, which is the next intake. And we apply for new programs every year. So in January, we will know if we have any new programs to add to this list. But these are the current programs that we are offering, where the pillars being business, tech, and design. However, we will not really dive deeper into the specific programs for now, but just wanted to give you an overlook of the programs that we have here at Hyper Island. So if we go to the next slide, I will let Angelica take some time here.
All right, thank you so much, Lynn. So yeah, like Lynn mentioned, we have maybe a few new programs coming in January, so please keep a look on our website to see if we get any new programs. So I know a lot of you here today come from various places, and it might be a little confusing. Am I a Nordic applicant or am I an international applicant, and how do I know? So this is like the very simple way of explaining what category you fall into. So if you're a Nordic applicant, you need to be either a citizen of Sweden, Iceland, Norway, Denmark, Finland, or any of the related territories. Or you do have to have a permanent right of residence in any of those countries. So Sweden, Iceland, Norway, Denmark, Finland, or the related territories. You can also qualify as a Nordic applicant if you have a temporary right of residence that is not work or study dependent and you live in Sweden. So that is not related to the other Nordic countries. It has to be a Swedish temporary right of residence, and it has to cover the full duration of the program. So your permit cannot expire after 6 months during the program. It has to be valid the entire time that you're going to study at Hyper Island. So make sure if you're applying for example, motion designer, which is a very long program, and you have a temporary right of residence, it has to cover the entire time that you're studying in the program. And we will ask you to upload proof of residence, since we have to also report this to the government agency, as Lynn mentioned. If you don't qualify for any of these categories, you are considered an international applicant. So then you are from a non-Nordic country and you do not have a right of residence in these countries. You will have to pay a program fee. The fees are stated on our website. We have an early bird offer going on right now, so you can check out that on our website as well. And Lynn will be happy to answer questions about that through email or phone. And we also help you with the study residence permit for coming to Sweden to study. So if you're admitted as an international student here at Hyper Island, we help you with the paperwork needed in order to get your residence permit and come and live in Sweden. So that is basically the very short version. And if you have any questions, if you're unsure, where do I fit in? Our email address is right there, applicants@hyperisland.com. And you can always send us questions and we'll answer to our best ability. All right. So let's dig into this. So as we mentioned, it's a little different if you're a Nordic applicant or if you're an international applicant. So I work mostly with Nordic applicants, but I also handle internationals, but Lynn is the go-to person there. So I'm going to cover basically the Nordic admissions cycle right here. So if you're a Nordic applicant in it says early January here, but we just got confirmation that it will be mid-January. We're going to open up the applications and the application task will be released. So if you've been on our website and you've seen an application task posted, it will not be the one for Nordic applicants for 2023. There will be a new one posted in early to mid-January. And then throughout January through March, I'm going to host a couple of application task workshops. So that's basically online or on-site sessions when you can come and get some inspiration and work on the application task together with other applicants. And you're not supposed to basically to solve the application task in that session, but you get a lot of inspiration from other people and a lot of help as well. And then we will close the applications on April 11, 2023. So you have to apply sometime between mid-January until April 11. And we cannot accept any late applications for any reason. It doesn't matter if your internet didn't work or if your grandma died or any other excuse. we cannot accept any late applications, and that is because we are regulated by the government, and everyone has to apply within the time frame. So after the deadline, we are going to let people who move on to the next step know what date they're invited to the admissions days that we have in May. So if you move on to the next step in the admissions process, we'll call you or send you an email with the invitation for the admissions days in May. And then we have the admissions days. And then around midsummer, we're going to let you know if you are admitted or put on reserve list or whatever the news are. So that's, in short, the Nordic admissions cycle. And then we have, for Lynn, this one.
Yes. Okay. So what you see here is then naturally the international admissions process. I won't be diving very deep into this as I want our expert panel to discuss this as well. But just to clarify, the applications are open for August 2023 intake. And in order to successfully complete the admission, the applicant has to submit an application, meet with me individually, and later on with the rest of my team to join a digital admissions day, which is half of a day you meet online together with other international applicants as well as my team. And it's a chance for us to get to know you better, but also a chance for you to experience some of the Hyper Island methodology and ways of learning here through group activities and other tasks. And you might see a little star there on the screen. I see someone nodding, that's good. That stands for early bird EB, which is what Angelica was briefly mentioning, the discount that we have going on right now. So if you are to go successfully through the whole admissions process before December 5th, you qualify for a discount of 10,000 Swedish krona reduction from your tuition fee, whichever program you decide to apply to. And yes, so I think that's it. It's pretty straightforward with the process. And if you have any questions, you're of course always very welcome to reach out to me. I hope that I'm the expert on this specific field, so please just reach out to me. But I think we should leave this for now and let's dive into the main part, which I assume is why most of you are here today, to understand more and hear more from our current students. So let's dive a bit deeper into that. So before Hyper Island. So right now I want to welcome up on the stage, the virtual stage, our current students to discuss a little bit about this before. So let's just start. How did you hear about Hyper Island and why did you apply to Hyper Island?
Yes, I can go first if you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. I heard about Hyper Island from my boss. In 2020, I came to Sweden without knowing anyone at all, and I was in my room for many months without really knowing people. And then I applied for an internship. Then I talked to my boss that I want to get a job here. Back then it was like sort of small internship. So he recommended me to go to Hyper Island. He told me that it's really a big thing and it's hyped and you should try to go there. And then on the last minute, I applied to Hyper Island. Yeah, that's how I know about it.
I can continue. So for me, I was actually planning a career transition. I was here in Sweden with my husband. He's working for a Swedish company. And I was already having my eye on UX design, so I decided to research on internet, and that's how I found Hyper. And then I started to talk to some friends from Brazil if they knew the school, and they all have amazing things to say about Hyper. So that was kind of easy to decide to apply.
So I guess I'll go next. So I was looking for a career change as well. I used to be in the medical field, And I kind of centered my sights around motion design, and just through looking around different resources on the internet, on Reddit and stuff like that, I heard about Hyper, and I pretty much made my decision kind of in a vacuum. I didn't really know anyone else who had ever heard of it, but that's pretty much how I figured out about it.
Yeah, and I think it became something that I saw and like, yeah, kind of knew about Hyper Island when I started studying, because I studied in university before, 2 different bachelor programs. And it's like a common thing to like start looking into masters and stuff like that after you're done, once you're starting to, or you're getting close to your graduation. And that's when you start talking with your classmates, you start talking with program managers and stuff like that. And that's where I got to hear about like Hyper Island for the first time. But it's also a common theme that you hear about it, I think, when you're in like within the business here in Sweden, because Hyper Island has always been a thing here, and it's growing bigger and bigger. And throughout the years, I've had a lot of friends who went to Hyper as well. So I've been talking with them a lot as well. But basically, a lot of like mouth to mouth, just talking with people.
If I can add something to what Patrick said, my husband is a developer, and he also asked about Hyper on the company that he was working with, and everyone there was saying great things about Hyper. They're UX designer as well, so that's also, we did some digging as well here in Sweden, and it was we hear a lot of good things about the non-traditional way of teaching here. So yeah, that happened as well for me to decide if I wanted to apply to either a bachelor or to Hyper, for example, since I already have a background in law. So it was kind of like that.
I can also add a bit more to that. Like when I just moved to Sweden with my partner, who got to like study in Sweden with a scholarship in Sweden, like I didn't know what I really wanted to do. I had a bachelor degree in language, and when you move to a new country, the degree that you had back in your country, it becomes almost like useless. So I was in a very deep like existential crisis, and then I talked it out to my Swedish boss, and he was like, "You can go to Hyper Island," and I was like, "Okay, let's try." But it worked out in the end, and I'm really happy with that. So I'm very lucky to be here.
Also, to add on a little bit more on that, actually. So before I actually started here on Hyper Island, when I knew that I was accepted, I was going to start, I was already out there, and I had some stuff I was doing with some different companies here in Stockholm. And basically, you know, you just small talk a little bit, and then you just mention, oh yeah, I'm going to start studying at Hyper Island. And already just mentioning that, I've gotten like a few places like, oh, then you need to do an internship. So you know what? You should actually do it here, without them even knowing like what I'm gonna study or anything like that. They were already kind of offering me a internship position.
Yeah, it's definitely easier if you have like Hyper Island, because I used to try to apply for jobs and internship in Sweden, but without really the name and have like education from Thailand, it was almost impossible to get my feet in. But with this Hyper Island, I could get more internships. And also when I went to Germany, because I did internship in Germany, they even know about Hyper Island, and studios in Germany, they asked me, oh, how do I get more of Hyper Island students, graduates who work with us? Because like it's also very well known in Germany that Hyper Island is a good quality school, that the students not only have the hard skills, but also has the soft skills. And also there are workplaces that are like looking specifically for Hyper students. It's like almost you get a highway to the job.
Fantastic. Thank you all for sharing so much. And I guess what I hear is like career change, I guess, is one of the most common patterns to why you come to Hyper Island, and heard it through friends and so on. And if we move a little bit forward and talk a little bit about the admissions process, right? We now both know that it does vary from Nordic and international slightly, where Blaze, for instance, had his online through a digital admissions day, and it was a bit different for Nordics. But if you talk overall, all of you four, how did you feel about the admissions process, and walk us through your thoughts on the application task, yeah, just share a little bit of insights there.
All right. Oh, all right. I think I'll go right now. So for me, I kind of took the admission as more of like a personal challenge than something that I was worried about in terms of, am I going to get accepted? Um, and I think that that kind of ties over to the whole Hyper Island experience in general. Um, I think that challenging yourself to kind of put out your best work is sort of how I would see the application task. Originally, I had an idea of, because I wanted to go into motion, that I wanted to do like a full animation and full video. But I think it's just a really good opportunity to just try and apply yourself. And I personally would worry more about whether you are putting your best self out there versus whether or not the organization is going to accept you or not.
Yes. As for me, I also got to study on the Nordic applicant basis. So I also did the application task. And the problem with the application task is that it's very open-ended. There's no instruction. It's just written there like, it's very open-ended, and you need to be able to interpret the task according to your understanding. So there's no right or wrong. But what I did for me, I did a stop motion animation, something like stop motion that tells a story, sort of documentary about life, like of students in Thailand and the malnutrition, and then somehow show the thought process and also show the effort. And why is it stop motion is because back then I didn't have fancy software or hardware to work on it. So putting it out there in stop motion, I really hope that it would match with the program that I was trying to apply for, which is motion creative. And it took me 4 days to do it, both script writing and also the video itself. So just try your best to interpret the task in the way that you think you understand it, and also try to make others also to get on the same page as you. I think this is the most important thing, but it's totally up to your creativity, of course.
I can go next. When I applied to Hyper Island, it was kind of an impulsive thing. I had a little thing that we here in Sweden called fika. Basically, you go and take a coffee and a bun with someone, and yeah, just having a little chat. And when me and my friend was chatting about Hyper Island, so I went back home after that, and I started looking up. All right, what do they actually have? Because I've been talking about going to Hyper Island for probably 10 years, but it never happened. So I went back, checked, saw that. All right, there is about 12 hours until the deadline is to actually apply for this program. I was like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. So I started typing in all my credentials and stuff like that was necessary for the program. And then I got to the part where it's like, you need to do a application task as well. I'm like, uh-oh. But I just threw something together in an hour or two and uploaded and was like, you know what? If it works, it works. And guess what? It did work. So I would say don't stress it out too much. It's all about like how you want to like explain your creativity and kind of interpret the task itself. And it's all about just do it.
Yeah,
I can add a bit to that. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I have my classmate who put 4 months of work into the application process, and then I was doing it for 4 days, and Patrick maybe a little bit shorter than that. So, so don't stress out too much. Just be creative.
I completely agree with that. Like for me, I just did a small video, but I had to have at least 1 or 2 days trying to come up with ideas and a small script and everything. But I think that what they said is like a great approach to how you are going to do your admission assignment. Like don't stress out too much, go with it, be creative, because it is an open task. So there is many possibilities for you to create something. And for me, something that helped me very much was the workshops, the admissions workshops. I did one, and it really helped me to have like, okay, I can go on this way. Because when you come out from traditional school, it's a different way of thinking. We are always worried about being right or wrong, if there is a right answer to that. And for Hyper, the assignment is very open. So like Blaise said, he did a motion design. I did a small video. So explaining my process of decisions. So it's like, it is open, but I had fun doing that. It was super fun to create the video. So that's what I would say, like, don't stress out too much. Just go there and do it.
Okay, so what I hear is just do it, use your creativity, and don't stress too much. I think they sound like pretty reasonable and good tips. Which was actually, I wanted to ask you how you thought they could best nail the application, but I think you went through that quite well. Is there anything else you want to add? Because, you know, you probably remember yourself that you were pretty nervous and could be pretty intense. Is there anything further you want to share before we move forward?
I can add something as well. Like I said, I did a small video, but I heard about people who did small presentations in PDF and they got in as well. So it's really open concept.
Yes, exactly. That's good to know that the format is usually very open. If you want to do a text, or if you want to do video like some of our students have done, or a PowerPoint, is kind of up to you. Okay, so this is a little bit about the before Hyper Island, and now we have these 4 amazing students that are actually students at Hyper Island. So let's focus about the being at Hyper Island. So the next slide here, and here you see some really nice pictures from both Karlskrona and in Stockholm from our Way Weeks, which we actually will be talking about. But yes, so let's focus on being at Hyper Island. So life in Sweden, if we start off with, how's life in Sweden comparing to, I know some of you have lived in Sweden for a longer time. Some of you come from the States, for instance, or Brazil. Can you share a little bit, how is life here comparing to your home country? And do you have any funny first memories from your first month?
Well, so we arrived here in 2020, so it was pandemic. So it was everywhere. So it was not very much different. So we were not going out so much. And we were living first in Malmö. And yeah, it was a bit overwhelming to prepare the moving as well. And but I guess that would happen any country, not only Sweden. Like you get a bit worried, anxious. You have so many things to prepare, and visa and tickets. But once we were here, everything became calm and chill, and we were able to, enjoy our days here.
I
Yeah,
think
for
it
me,
depends.
I think
You go ahead.
moving here to Sweden from the US, it was definitely a change, but maybe not so intense as I would have expected, especially weather-wise. I was expecting it's going to be really cold during the winter and really dark. Here in Karlskrona is not as bad as being in Stockholm in that regard, I believe. So what, like from what I hear at least. But yeah, it was quite a bit of things to figure out in terms of, visa, moving here, getting a SIM card, figuring out where I'm going to live. But living here, a lot of people speak English. In that regard, it's pretty, yeah, not too big of a deal. And I really enjoy the nature around here. It's not as much of a small city as what I had expected either.
I maybe have a little bit opposite opinion, like because I come from Bangkok and my city has like population of 10 millions. So I find that Sweden is so quiet. And especially I was living in Västerås, which is 90 kilometers from Stockholm, and I was commuting every day on the train to like between school and home. So it was very intense year for me. But with regards to the language, it's super chill because you can also work part-time using just English language. It's not always that you will always need like to know Swedish, and it's quite easy to get around in comparison to other countries that you need to know local language in order to get some part-time jobs. And I think it depends on your personality. If you like some calm and cool down time and a lot of nature, I think it could be nice for you. But if you are a big city person, then maybe you will need to meet up with your friends a little more often and have some house party, and then it will be all fine.
And I mean, being a Swedish person, I'd say going to Hyper Island, it's actually like going to just like different island, because it's not like being in Sweden at all. In Sweden, you know, a lot of people say that the Swedish people are a lot like reserved and stuff like that. That is kind of true, but when you come here to Hyper Island, it's definitely a different approach to it. People are very open. You only speak English at Hyper Island as well, so that's a big thing. Everybody is always included, and even me, like we're like 40 people per class here or per program here on in Stockholm, and so I have like 39 other students that is in my class, but we also have like I think it's like 6 or 7 other programs here that is full time as well, and you actually interact a lot with them. Both sometimes you will have some kind of like sprints or projects together for a few days, but also you meet people around in school all the time, and you say hi to them, you start chatting with them, and you go out after school with them a little bit, and you know, maybe take a drink or two. So despite like not knowing everybody, you still get to know everybody, and it's a really cool feeling.
Thank you all for sharing. And that kind of leads me into the next theme I would like for you to discuss, which Patrick kind of touched upon, but like very, very common question that I see is the social life, the networking opportunities. Like, what about the social life? How would you, how would you suggest people go about it to get to know students outside of their programs? What about the network? And maybe do you have any school activities after the studies?
I can go ahead and start. I guess I'm from design lead, and our class is like really tight together. So we always try to do stuff together. I think we do stuff like in the class, not everyone, but I'd say we're about like 10 to 20 people that does stuff maybe 3 to 4 times a week after school. So we go to school like 9 to 5 basically every day, but almost every day basically in the week we would go out and do something together. We have like Slack where we have most of our communication going through, and people would put up like it's anything from like a job event or maybe someone's birthday to like, you know, just go out for an after school drink or something like that, or go for karaoke. There's so many different things that we do together in the class, but we also invite other people from other programs. A lot of us know like someone knows someone from another program, and everyone's always welcome to join us as well, because we want to include everybody. It's just more fun. The more the merrier, basically.
Yeah, I was worried about social life here in Karlskrona when we came here. I think that in Brazil, I had a very busy social life, I have to say. So when we were moving to Karlskrona, I was very reluctant actually to come. I even asked the admissions team to change my first option from UX design to a different course. So I would have a different first option, not in Karlskrona, for example. I was very reluctant to come, and now I feel that I'm grateful. I'm happy I came here to Karlskrona. It's a great setting for studying. It's not such a huge city, but you still have a lot of things. I don't say it's like you don't have a lot of bars and a lot of parties and stuff like that, but you have karaoke nights at Thursday, for example. You have your classmates. Like, I feel that here we are very close to each other, so it's very easy to, you know, just have a cup of coffee on the weekend with someone, or do something together, do play game nights or something like that. I feel that Karlskrona has this advantage to make us come together more often. And I don't know about Stockholm, but I'm happy I came actually.
I can add to it because my program is in Stockholm. So I have also a friend who used to study in Karlskrona, and like Larissa said, Karlskrona it's maybe a little bit better with the social aspects because you live in a small city and everyone is in the same community, and it's easier to get closer. Whereas if you are in Stockholm, of course, it's not advisable to do it at school. Like, some people work part-time or they have family at home and have a lot of things going on outside of the school. So I find it's a little bit hard to actually get close to people because Stockholm is a city life, basically. And but still, if you find someone that you share the same interest, or you can talk to someone else from the other programs too that might need your skill, because I personally find it easier to collaborate as well sometimes, that when you don't have the same skill set. So in that aspect, you can also be like needed, and you can talk to each other, get to know each other, and maybe see if you will be a good match for the future projects as well. So I think that it's going okay.
Yeah, one thing that I'll add about Karlskrona, it's like there's a lot of people who you probably never see. Like there's a decent portion of people who probably spend a pretty isolated life here in Karlskrona. But I would say that there is a contingent of people who definitely like to go out, socialize, do activities together. And one thing that I didn't know about before coming to Hyper is that there's a ping pong table, and we use that to great effect while we're here. We play a lot, so that's great.
I love it. I must say that's something that I am jealous that we don't have in Stockholm, the ping pong table. But yeah, so that's a little bit more about the kind of social life and network aspect. And what about, because I also often hear, what do you mean no homework, no teachers, like methodology, what is that? So maybe we can talk a little bit, or you can talk a little bit about, you know, the commitment, the self-leader aspect, like what's the support you feel that you have from program managers and industry leaders, and like the expectations there. Because we often see that there's resources, but yeah, maybe I don't want to lead you into something, but if you could talk a little bit about those topics.
I can start. So yeah, we don't really have teachers. We have something called a program manager that basically sets up the whole program. That person is also going to be the one responsible for like the program running well. They will invite so-called industry leaders, which is basically people from the industry coming in, and they could host so-called like modules, which is how we divide into different things like projects and so on here on Hyper Island. So during my time here, we're going to have, I think it's 10 modules in total, and that's for a full year. And during each module, basically, there's going to be someone from the industry that will come in and be like the one responsible hosting that module itself. And they will also invite other industry leaders to kind of guest lecture the students. They could host workshops. Right now, for example, today at Design Lead here in Stockholm, we have one person that is coming in from the industry to host a workshop about ideation. And that is just an example. That person will come in, they will host it, and then maybe they'll come back later. We don't know, but it's always good because not only is it not like in uni, we're just like, oh, here, go and read this. And they talk about it for 3 hours, and then you just go home, do some homework, and you have an exam. Here it's more like you get like, all right, this is a project that you guys need to do. This is what it's going to be about. Now go and figure it out. And you have all these industry leaders coming in to help you out with all of these tasks. And at the same time, you can always network with them as well. So you're building a network with the industry as you're going here on Hyper Island. Like you get so many new contacts, so many new people to talk to. Already a lot of people in my class, for example, they used a lot of these industry leaders coming in here as mentors, who's mentoring them throughout their Hyper Island journey right now. And they are going to be there for the whole time as well. And they also help you to kind of get you into internship positions and stuff like that as well. So it's a great opportunity not to just, you know, have very different people. If you go to a traditional university, it's the same person that's going to do the same lecture year after year after year. Here on Hyper, it's a new person coming in basically every year to lecture that kind of module. And they bring in people they know from the industry as well. So it's always new people. It's always a new experience. And that's what's so great with it, in my opinion.
If I may, actually, I'll go next. So yeah, it's definitely, I think the self-leadership portion is a huge part of it. Like, so here I'm only in my 4th month here, and we're just doing basics essentially, but the industry leaders, the structure of it usually will have basically Monday, they'll come and talk, Tuesday is half the day, and then they'll give us some assignment that we have to turn in by Friday. And it's quite a mix. Sometimes the industry leaders are professionals, but not teachers. And so it's quite a mix. Often it'll seem basically that if you want to learn it, you have to do basically most of the learning by yourself. And I think if people just rely on what they quote unquote have to do for like the completion of their course, they will probably be miles and miles behind something like the professional standard. So I think it's such an important thing to be kind of like self-driven, because like there are plenty of people in my own class, like specifically, that I feel like, you know, if you're not driven to do more than what Hyper Island provides and what the industry leaders provide, then I feel that you won't be at an industry standard. So I think that the self-leadership portion of things is super important.
Yes, I
Yeah.
can add to that.
Yeah, go.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I would describe Hyper Island as like, it's like you are getting a yearly ticket to enter to like a very big seminars, and there's going to be a lot of panel speakers that comes. And of course you can choose to go to that seminars, or you can choose not to go as well. And the good thing about this structure is that you can determine your pace. So in my class, because it's animation and hard skill intensive, there's going to be people who have 6 years of work experience in animation beforehand, and they come to Hyper Island because they want to go to international market as opposed to being in India or in Peru, for example. So it's a good way for you to go international, actually. And also there are people, for example, like me, who is a totally newbie, just do the career change and have to learn the new skills. And by having these structures, not everyone has to sit in the same master class and trying to follow the same instruction, the same thing. Of course, you have master class from time to time, but it's not going to be that everyone has to follow the same pattern, but what's more like that there's going to be a lot of panel speakers, which are people in the industry. We call them industry leaders, and they will explain to us how they get into the career, how they develop themselves, childhood dream, and then they took this step, took this, and so you actually get to learn about how they actually make their career. As for the hard skills in animation, of course, for hard skill, they also recommend us nice resources to learn as well, which is the same resources that they use in the career. And what is good about this, as I said, of course, you can determine your own pace, you can practice it in your free time, and you are not totally dependent on the class, whether you are too slow or too fast. It's just super flexible. And once you go to Hyper Island, you will understand how to learn the stuff. And normally we think that if we want to learn some stuff, we have to collect as many knowledge as possible, know as many things as possible, have knowledge in depth, but that's not the effective way to learn. The best way to learn is actually to have the projects on hands. And then you just need to learn the skills, develop expertise and resources that is related to that project. And with this mindset, actually, after Hyper Island, you will approach everything in life like much easier. So it's a learning for life, not just only for career as well. And you will have the same skill set. If you want to change career another time after Hyper Island, you will also have the skill to actually do the career change by yourself. And this is what I like about it too.
It's very good that you mentioned that and everything that everyone else said, because Hyper Island, I feel it's really about your personal journey here. We are going to have people with so many different backgrounds in life and in education. Like in my class is UX design. Our program is a bit similar to what Patrick described. And you're going to have people that already have some skills, for example, in UX, because for some reason they decided to read about it or study about it before the course starts. But you're also going to have complete new beginners. So you cannot compare yourself inside the class. You need to focus on your journey. And the way that Hyper makes the modules and the projects, it's very good when you focus on what are the skills that you need to learn on the next step or for this project. And if someone in your group knows something, they can teach you a bit more about that. And you're going to have the motivation to learn by yourself as well. So it's not like a traditional school in the sense that everyone is going to have a teacher teaching you the same thing. They're going to come, they're going to do those lectures about the specific themes. You might be a total beginner, you might have already some knowledge of that on that topic, but it's yourself doing your journey. You're going to go out and learn more about that thing. And there is no like, you don't need to be here. Everyone does not need to be here. It's everyone has their own journey here in Hyper. That's a good thing to have in mind when you're here.
Also,
Yeah.
to add to that, sorry, I
No,
just want
go
to
on.
add that at Hyper Island, because it's a very one of a kind curriculum. So you as a class, when you have a consensus, you can also influence the curriculum as well. For example, if the class is there's a lot 3D people, then maybe you can ask your program manager, can you please bring this artist to us? And then the program manager will contact the artist, and then we will have a workshop with him. So the ability to actually determine the teacher and the topic you want to learn as a class is also actually what is lucrative here to study at Hyper.
Yeah, I just want to add to that as well.
Mhm.
Like, I think it's very important that you utilize like each individual in your class. Everyone has different experiences. Everyone has a different background, and everyone has something to give and take. Like, don't just look at yourself, but also never compare yourself with someone else. It doesn't matter if you're in the same class. Everybody has different goals. It's like Larissa said, it's about your journey here on Hyper. So always compare yourself with yourself. Always set your own goals, your own standards. That's the way you should be looking at things, not comparing yourself who's the best in class or anything like that, because people could be wanting to do different things that you want to do when you're done here on Hyper Island. So always just look at yourself.
Okay, thank you very much, all the four of you, for sharing. I think you summarized Hyper Island also in a nutshell, what it means to study here and all that it includes really, really well. Being mindful of time, I want to just dive a little bit into one more topic that we haven't covered, which is the methodology, or the toolbox, I should say. And just briefly, maybe someone can explain a little bit, what is the toolbox and what is your favorite ones? Maybe it's stinky fish, and maybe someone can explain what I'm talking about right here.
I think it means that like Hyper Island has like different toolboxes, which are like the tools that helps you collaborate better with a group, because mostly problems happens in the workplace because you don't know how to communicate well, you don't know how to get your needs met. And with Hyper Island, we have like team development session, we have classes specifically that teach us how to communicate the team. For example, when we start working on a project, the first thing first, you should always check in and also set up a POD, which is a point of departure. We as a group determine together what is success and fiasco, what to be met, and what's your pet peeve that your teammate needs to know, all this stuff, and a lot more to come. But basically, Hyper Island gives us the system to actually collaborate better. And when you also leave for the workforce, you will also go to the workforce with all these toolbox, and it makes you look like you are very emotionally intelligent, I would say. And I find that it's a good development for us all.
That was a very good summary, Sean. Thank you for sharing. And the stinky fish is one of my favorites, and it's a toolbox simply, something smelling. There's something around, like an elephant in the room. No one's talking about it. So we just have to pick it up and talk about it, because everyone's aware of the smell. But okay, I think for now, we should probably move forward into the next slide, which, let's see here. Yes, which simply says, any other questions? So now it's the audience, or your chance to ask. Do you have any questions? Feel free to both either unmute yourself or write in the chat. We have a few minutes to ask any further questions.
Hello, hi. I have a question.
Hi, Brenda.
Hello. I would like to, I'm really, thank you so much for all your really great insights into Hyper Island. I've been keen on Hyper Island for some time. I'm one of those people that would like to make a career change. So I'm working a little bit with video in my current work, and I would like to improve. So I'm very interested in joining Hyper Island. I'm just wondering, is there a way that we could sign up somewhere, so when the application for Nordic application opens, we kind of get an email so we don't miss it? Is that possible? Thanks.
I can answer that, actually. we don't have a like a mailing list right now, but if you send me an email, you can email the applicants at hyperisland.com email. I can create a list, and then once we open up, I can include you on that email and let you know when the application opens. And it will be mid-January. So if you write down like January 16 in your calendar and you check our website, it might be up by then. That's our hope. Since we need to wait for some approvals from the government, we can't say the official date yet, but it will be sometime in mid-January. So just send us an email with your contact information and I'll make sure you get notified.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I see
Hi.
we have one in the chat. Oh, sorry. I'm just gonna answer the one in the chat first. So we got a question about student housing at Hyper Island. We do not have any student housing at Hyper Island, but you can apply through like for example, Stockholm's bostadsförening, like the city's apartments as a student, and we help you with the paperwork for that. Yes, next question.
Yes, hi everyone. Thanks for all the inputs. And I have a question in regards to some of the requirements for some of the courses is math. And I read it like, you have to have this high school level of math knowledge or whatever. But I don't really know, it's going to be really enough, or is it my math is going to be, so how I can decide? I read it under 2 courses, but I'm a little bit unsure about how much math needs for the AI or for the data analyst. So yeah.
So what you can do is that you can also send us an email and attach your transcript or diploma or the thing that you have, and we can look at it and we can let you know if that will be sufficient for the program you're interested in, or if you need to take some additional coursework before applying. And it's also possible to apply with real competence. So for example, if you've worked as something like math related for a couple of years, you can get the documentation from your employer stating that you have gained the same knowledge from work experience, and you could also send that for us to look at.
Okay, thanks.
I actually, the housing question, I thought I could just touch more on it. That I think that's something students maybe can also agree on, especially for you that moved here from abroad. But there is a lot of resources, and while we don't have any on campus housing, we do see students actually, going together and living together. Maybe they are in a hotel the first 2 weeks just to feel comfortable before they meet their future potential, people that they end up living with, like roomies. We also have like Facebook, like support groups, I know, where students also, get in touch with each other. So I would say that there's no campus on campus housing, but there is definitely opportunities to get help, because I think that's something we see in the network, that people really want to help each other. I hope maybe that adds a little bit more on it. And is it possible to study remote a few days of the year in a full-time program? Maybe that's a better question for the students to answer. What is your takeaway?
I would personally say like it's pretty flexible. Like there are students in my class who weren't even able to come for the first few months of the program. And at the same time, I know that there are students who are still part of the program who basically never come at all. That's actually something that I was not expecting, in terms of like, I thought like, okay, this is serious. You show up like it's a full-time job. But I think it's more about the individual kind of basis of like, okay, what can I get out of this? Because like, in terms of like attendance and stuff like that, although, it's flexible, there are students who basically just don't come, and they still get their semester assessments done, and they're still in the program. But it's more about what you can get out of it. So I would say that there's like flexibility, and like PMs can kind of make it work in terms of setting up Zoom links if you can't be there. So I would say it's not like, if you can't be here for a few days, you're not going to get kicked out of the program.
But I would also then add that the commitment is, of course, to be full-time present on campus. It's been the cases that few of our international students have had delays with their residence permits, which has been the case of why they've been online. But we expect you to be able to be fully present. But of course, do you have a trip or something happens, life happens, right? But that's something that you communicate with your program manager. But encouraged to, of course, to be prepared to be on campus. And now that we are mindful of time, we'll need to go to the last slide. We just want to thank you very much for all of you for being here, especially to our current students who gave so many great inputs and insights and shared basically what Hyper Island really is for them. A recommendation that we have is to follow our team's Instagram. You should be able to see the QR code here and also the account name, where we actually frequently have different student takeovers and highlight our students. So you can learn more about what Hyper Island really is and getting other tips. And we actually currently have Patrick together with one of our other design lead students, who is doing a takeover from yesterday and also today. But yes, just thank you so much for being here. We wish you all best of luck. And of course, we hope to see you next fall at Hyper Island, either in Karlskrona or Stockholm. And if you have any further questions, you're always welcome to email us. But thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day or night, depending where you are.
Thank you.
It was good.